parents treated me like an ATM and disowned me at a family party. So I cut them off, and what happened next shattered the image they protected. I, a 32-year-old male, am a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. It's not the fancy FANG level stuff, but I make decent money around $175,000 plus bonuses and stock options. Growing up was rough in ways that didn't seem obvious at first. My dad, Tom, a 58-year-old male, worked at the post office but got injured on the job when I was in high school and hasn't worked in 15 years. My mom, Karen, a 57-year-old female, tried being an Instagram influencer at 50 plus. Yeah, seriously, but mostly lives off my bank account while calling herself a lifestyle consultant. My younger sister, Ashley, a 29-year-old female, dropped out of 3 different colleges I paid for and now calls herself a social media consultant, despite having maybe 2,000 followers across all platforms. Financially supporting them started small when I landed my first coding job. But over the years, it snowballed until I was basically funding their entire lifestyle. House, cars, credit cards, vacations, the works. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they'd get back on their feet. But deep down, I knew they were just using me. So I guess I should start with the night everything blew up. My dad's 58th birthday dinner. My mom picked this crazy expensive steakhouse called the Capitol Grill, where the cheapest steak was like $85. Not because my dad even liked the food, but because of the ambiance, valet parking, dim lights, waiters that bow like you're royalty. That kind of place where they don't even put prices on the women's menus, which was a joke since I was the one paying anyway. The bill would easily hit $2,000 plus with the wine they were ordering. I showed up like 25 minutes late. I didn't do it on purpose, but I didn't exactly rush either after spending 14 hours debugging some vice president's urgent project that could have waited until Monday. When I walked in, they were already demolishing appetizers that probably cost more than what most people spend on groceries for a week. Mom gave me this dismissive wave like I was some random busboy. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. Ashley glanced at her phone like I'd interrupted something important on TikTok. There were about 14 people at the table. Some cousins, a couple of aunts, my mom's life coach Diane, who charges mom $200 an hour for advice like manifest your truth, and 3 women I'd never seen before who were probably just there to tell mom how fierce her new $400 haircut looked. I sat at the far end of the table, as far from the action as I could get. The conversation was exactly what you'd expect. Ashley went on about her brand collaborations like it was some groundbreaking business. Spoiler, she made $600 last year from it. Dad made these comments about how some of us understand real work directed at me, obviously, even though I literally fund their whole damn life. My Uncle Pete, a 55-year-old male, asked when I was going to invest in his latest get-rich-quick scheme selling some kind of nutritional supplements that definitely weren't a pyramid scheme. Narrator, they were. Mom just smiled at everyone like she was Kim Kardashian receiving peasants. Every time the waiter came by, they'd order more stuff without even glancing at me. Another $300 bottle of wine, Seafood Towers, extra sides. Nobody said thanks or even acknowledged that I would be covering the tab. It was just expected the same way it had been expected for the past 8 years. I was just counting the minutes until I could leave, figuring I'd do the usual wait until dessert, slide my credit card to the waiter, make some excuse about an early meeting and bounce. That was the routine. That's when Mom stood up and clinked her glass for a toast. So everyone shuts up and turns to Mom. I'm expecting the usual cheesy crap to my wonderful husband, or some inside joke from when they were in college that nobody gets but we all pretend to laugh at. But then she says, "To a new beginning. Starting today, we are no longer a family." For a second I thought it was some weird joke, like she'd follow it with something about we're becoming a dynasty or some other nonsense, but she didn't. People actually started clapping, not loud but enough to make it real. My cousin Tyler, a 27-year-old male, even whispered, "About time," under his breath. I looked at Dad. He wasn't shocked or surprised, just smug, like this was all part of the plan. That's when something in me snapped. I started laughing. Not a real laugh, more like that stupid kind of giggle that happens when something is so messed up, you don't know how else to react. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the keys to the $78,000 Tesla Model Y I bought them last year. Yes, I know I'm an idiot. I dropped them on the table with a clunk that made everyone jump. "Then I guess you won't need this," I said. Mom's smile froze. Dad's hand stopped midway to his wine glass. Then I pulled out my phone, logged into the joint trust account I'd set up for all of them. The one that paid for their $4,200 monthly mortgage, Ashley's $2,800 downtown apartment, all the credit cards they somehow maxed out every month, usually around $15,000 total, and closed it. Zeroed it out. Done. The look on their faces holy. The whole table went completely silent. Everyone was frozen like someone hit pause on a movie. Ashley finally spoke up. "That's it?" she asked, like she couldn't believe I'd actually grow a spine. I nodded. "Yeah, that's it," she laughed. Not a funny laugh, more like she thought I was playing some stupid joke and she was waiting for the punchline. "You can't just cut us off," Dad said, his voice getting that fake emotional quiver he uses when he's trying to manipulate me. "We're your family." "Not anymore," I said, throwing Mom's words back at her. "You just said so yourself. Starting today, remember?" Mom's face turned red. "Now listen here." "No, you listen," I cut her off. "For 10 years, I've paid your bills, bought your cars, funded your lifestyle. I've transferred over $700,000 to you guys, and the thanks I get is you publicly disowning me. Nah, I'm done." Then I stood up, looked around the table and said, "Dinner's on them tonight. Enjoy." And I walked out. About half an hour later, I found Ashley hiding behind one of those fancy curtains near the back of the restaurant. She was screaming into her phone, pacing back and forth, yanking at her hair like a crazy person. When she saw me, she turned and started yelling that I couldn't do this, that I didn't understand what I was doing, that I was destroying her influencer career before it even got started. "What influencer career, Ashley?" I asked. "You have 2,000 followers and you haven't had a sponsored post in 8 months. "I was building something," she screeched. "I have partnerships lined up. I was going to collab with Fitness Babe XO next week." "Well, I guess you'll need to find a way to pay for it yourself," I said. Then I walked away and left her there. That night I didn't go home. I checked into a $500 per night hotel downtown and sat at the bar for a few hours with my phone on silent, watching whatever sports game was on the television. I didn't even care who was playing. When I finally turned my phone back on around 2 o'clock in the morning, there were 23 missed calls. 11 from Ashley, 6 from Mom, and the rest from random numbers. Probably relatives who suddenly remembered I existed now that the money was gone. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, took a long shower, and for the first time in years, I slept without anxiety. Here's the thing. This didn't start overnight. Since I got my first decent tech job at 22, I've been the family bank. It started small, helping Mom with just this month's utility bills when I was making $65,000 as a junior developer. Then it was Dad's truck payment because his disability wasn't enough. Then Ashley's first semester of college. She dropped out after 4 months. Then their mortgage when they were about to get foreclosed on. Every time there was some story about how it was the last time they'd need help. Every time there was some promise about how they were getting back on their feet. Every time they'd be calling again within weeks. By the time I was 27 and making real money, crossed $120,000, they didn't even bother with the stories anymore. It was just expected. Mom would text me, "Need $3,500 for house stuff." And I'd transfer it, no questions asked, because the one time I did ask, I got a 3-day guilt trip about how I was abandoning family and forgetting where I came from. The next morning I drove to my actual house. Not their house, my house, the $1.2 million place I bought last year that I actually lived in and paid for. They hadn't even visited in over a year. Not since I stopped hosting Thanksgiving after catching them going through my home office looking for financial documents. I made coffee and turned on the news. It was quiet, peaceful. Then the doorbell rang. It was my Aunt Kathy, Mom's sister-in-law, standing there with a concerned look and a casserole dish. Classic Midwestern passive-aggressive move. "I heard what happened," she said. "Can I come in?" I let her in because I was curious how fast the family narrative would change. We sat at my kitchen table and she spilled everything. Dad's announcement wasn't just some random thing. They'd been planning it for weeks. Mom and Dad had already told a bunch of people they were cutting the cord with me, claiming I was toxic and had been manipulating them financially and emotionally for years. They framed the toast like some brave act of reclaiming their independence, except they never expected me to call their bluff. They thought I'd laugh it off, maybe storm out, make a scene. They never thought I'd actually take the car back or shut down the money. They thought I needed them to keep playing this little game we'd been playing for years. Kathy said Mom called her crying around midnight. Not because I cut them off, but because she couldn't access one of her accounts to book a hotel for her post-birthday retreat. I'd forgotten I had that one under my name too. And they've been talking about this for months, Kathy said, asking which relatives might take their side, figuring out how to spin it so you look like the bad guy. And you're just telling me this now? I asked. She looked down at her hands. I should have said something sooner. I didn't think they'd actually go through with it. I thanked her for coming, but told her I needed some time alone. After she left, I sat down and made a list of every account I had that was connected to them in any way. Joint accounts, co-signed loans, shared credit cards, insurance policies. It was longer than I expected. Much longer. 2 days after the dinner, I got served papers at my office, a formal notice saying Mom and Dad were suing me for financial abuse of elderly dependents. The lawsuit claimed $840,000 in damages. I almost laughed out loud when I read it. The lawsuit claimed I'd coerced them into financial arrangements and used familial obligation to exert undue control over their resources. They framed everything, every loan, every car payment, every tuition check for Ashley as if I'd been blackmailing them. The lawyer they found must have been either desperate or completely clueless about who was really bankrolling this lawsuit. The best part, Ashley joined in too. She sent an email to my company's general inbox claiming I'd harassed her, attaching screenshots of completely normal text messages I'd sent like, "The insurance payment for your car is due," as evidence. I guess she thought the more dramatic the story, the more likely someone would take her side. My boss called me into his office that afternoon. I figured I was in trouble, maybe even about to get fired. Instead, he slid the printed email across his desk and said, "Want to tell me what's going on?" So I did. I told him everything about supporting my family for years, about the birthday dinner, about the lawsuit. He listened without interrupting, then said, "My brother did the same thing to me for 8 years, nearly bankrupted me. Take whatever time you need to deal with this." And that's when my cousin Ryan, a 31-year-old male, called me. Ryan and I were close as kids, but drifted apart when his parents, my mom's brother and his wife, moved to Colorado. He'd become a paralegal at a decent law firm and somehow heard about the lawsuit. "Dude, what the actual hell is happening with Aunt Karen and Uncle Tom?" he asked. I gave him the short version. He was quiet for a minute, then said, "You know, they tried to get my parents to join the lawsuit. Told them you'd been stealing from the whole family for years. My dad told them to get bent. Then he offered to help, said he'd seen this kind of thing before, families trying to weaponize the legal system to keep the money flowing. He said he'd make some calls, see what he could find out." 3 days later, Ryan sent me a text. "Check your email. You're going to want to see this." The email contained audio recordings, not just 1 or 2 dozens of them. My mom on calls with various family members over the past 2 years, talking about me. "Mike's making stupid money now. We just need to keep him feeling guilty. We've got a system. Tom plays the angry dad. I cry a little. Ashley shows him some fake job application, and boom, another $10,000. He's such a sucker for the family. If he ever grows a pair, we're screwed." Turns out Ryan's mom, my Aunt Kathy, had been recording these calls because she was worried about how they were treating me, but didn't know how to bring it up. When the lawsuit happened, she gave everything to Ryan. I didn't respond publicly to the lawsuit. I didn't post anything on social media or try to defend myself, but I started building a case bank statements showing over $490,000 in transfers over 5 years. Voice recordings. Text messages where Mom asked for money for emergency roof repairs and then posted vacation photos from Cancun the next week. But then, something happened I didn't expect. Ryan, who had always been the quiet, play-by-the-rules guy, posted a detailed thread on Twitter just laying out what financial abuse really looks like when your cousin gets scapegoated by his entire family after being their ATM for 10 years. It blew up, like really blew up, over 700,000 views in one day. He didn't name names, but people started piecing it together. Internet detectives found Ashley's Instagram and TikTok accounts and dragged her so hard she had to make everything private within 48 hours. One commenter found a post from 6 months ago where she bragged about getting my brother to fund her lifestyle and how she hadn't had a real job in 3 years. The internet did its thing, and suddenly her direct messages were flooded with people calling her a leech. The lawsuit got withdrawn, but Mom and Dad weren't done. They started visiting relatives one by one, not to apologize, but to poison the well, saying I'd lost my mind, that I was cruel and vindictive, that I used money to punish love. But this time people weren't buying it, and suddenly the phone calls I got weren't demands for money. They were apologies. "I don't know what's gotten into your aunt and uncle. I always thought something was off, but I didn't want to say anything. I'm ashamed I stayed quiet so long." My Uncle Steve, Dad's younger brother, even sent me a lengthy email detailing how Dad had tried to borrow $25,000 from him last year, claiming it was for medical bills. Steve found out later it was actually for a timeshare in Florida. "I should have warned you," he wrote. "I just didn't want to get in the middle of family drama." It got weirdly quiet after the lawsuit was dropped, like a storm that suddenly disappeared but left everyone standing around waiting for the next crack of thunder. Mom and Dad stopped calling. Ashley went missing in action online. I almost thought they'd finally gotten the message, but I knew them. Silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. I didn't wait for whatever they were planning next. The funny thing about people who pretend to be independent is they always forget how many strings they've allowed someone else to hold. I started small and surgical. The Tesla was already gone, but I didn't just keep the money. I bought a 2008 Honda Civic for $4,500 cash and had it delivered to their driveway with a bow and a card that said, "Let's see how free you really are." They didn't thank me, but they didn't send it back either. Then I canceled the family phone plan that cost me $380 a month. Turns out none of them realized how much of their lives were tied to those phone numbers. Ashley lost access to all her social media accounts in one sweep because they were linked to that number. Mom couldn't get into her email where she kept all her password recovery info. Dad missed 3 golf outings with his buddies because nobody could reach him. I waited 3 days, then sent Ashley a screenshot of a message she'd posted 2 years ago, begging me to help her set up her business line because she didn't understand contracts. Next came their streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime. Spotify Premium Family Plan all canceled. Their smart home devices that were linked to my accounts deactivated. The grocery delivery service they'd been using account closed. But that was just the warm-up. The real hit came with the mortgage I'd co-signed years ago because Dad's credit was garbage, like 520 score garbage, and Mom cried about losing the house her kids grew up in. I had a clause in the paperwork, a quiet one my lawyer suggested when I set it up. It said that if either party severed familial ties publicly, the agreement could be dissolved and repayment accelerated. It took less than 5 minutes to activate. Now they owed the bank a full payoff of $387,000 in 30 days. And that's when the real panic started. Mom called first. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that started off calm, then cracked halfway through into something about betrayal. Dad showed up at my office. My assistant called and said some guy was downstairs yelling that I was destroying my own blood. I told her to call building security. When they escorted him out, he looked straight at the security camera in the lobby and gave it the finger. I clipped that footage and texted it to him, new family photo. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The thing about supporting someone financially for a decade, for 10 years, is that you end up with a lot of access to their personal information. I knew their social security numbers, birth dates, mother's maiden names, all the stuff you need for identity verification. Not because I was snooping, but because I'd filled out countless forms for them over the years. I used that information to check their credit reports. What I found made my blood boil. Remember my cousin Ryan? Turns out he'd been doing more than just collecting evidence. He'd been talking to his boss at the law firm, a partner who specialized in elder financial fraud. They were interested in my case not to defend me, but to use my family as an example. They've seen this pattern before, Ryan told me over pizza at my place. Adult children who weaponize elder care laws to extort money from successful relatives. The firm wants to establish some precedent to shut it down. So I gave them everything, all the recordings, all the bank statements, all the text messages. Then Ryan introduced me to someone else, Sarah, a 36-year-old female forensic accountant who worked with the firm occasionally. She had this no-nonsense vibe that made me think she'd seen every financial scam in the book. "Your parents have been busy," she told me after a week of digging. "They've been taking out credit cards in your name for at least 3 years. She showed me the evidence, 6 credit cards with combined limits of over $120,000 all maxed out. They'd used my social security number and an old address to apply. They'd been making minimum payments from the money I gave them for bills. It was identity theft, plain and simple. But Sarah found something else too. Dad's disability was a sham. He'd been working under the table for his brother's construction company for years while collecting government benefits. Mom had a secret bank account where she'd stashed almost $45,000 of my emergency money. And the house I'd been helping them keep wasn't even in their names anymore. They'd transferred the deed to Ashley 6 months ago, probably to protect it from exactly the kind of situation they were in now. "This is fraud on multiple levels," Sarah said. "Tax fraud, identity theft, welfare fraud, mortgage fraud. They could go to prison for this." I sat there staring at the stack of documents she'd brought, trying to process it all. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to protect me, and they'd been stealing from me, lying to me for years. "What do you want to do?" Ryan asked. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to just walk away to cut my losses and never look back. But another part of me, a part that had been silenced for too long, wanted justice. "I want them to face consequences," I finally said. "Real consequences. I was done playing nice." Ryan's boss helped me file a formal identity theft report with the police. I reported Dad's disability fraud to the relevant authorities. I froze all my credit accounts and formally disputed every card they'd opened in my name. And I contacted the mortgage company with evidence of the fraudulent deed transfer. Within 2 weeks, their world was collapsing. The credit card companies were demanding immediate payment. The disability office suspended Dad's benefits pending investigation. The mortgage company initiated foreclosure proceedings. But here's where it gets interesting. My old college roommate Chris, a 33-year-old male, worked at the local news station. I hadn't planned to take things public. But when Chris called and said he'd heard rumors about a financial abuse lawsuit that backfired, I decided it was time. I gave Chris an anonymous interview. Face-blurred voice altered just telling my story. How I'd supported my family for years, how they'd tried to sue me when I stopped, how they'd committed fraud and identity theft. The segment aired on a Tuesday night with the title, "Family Financial Abuse, the Hidden Epidemic." By Wednesday afternoon, it had been picked up by 3 national news outlets. By Thursday, it was trending on Twitter. The hashtag #FamilyFreeloaders became a hashtag people used to share their own stories of family financial abuse. Ashley's influencer contacts dropped her immediately. Dad's brother fired him from the under-the-table job. Mom's life coach Diane publicly denied ever knowing her. Then came the coup de grace. I'd been quietly documenting every family gathering for years, just audio recordings on my phone. Nothing fancy. I'd done it originally to remind myself I wasn't crazy when they gaslighted me about what was said or promised. Now I compiled the greatest hits into one 17-minute audio file and sent it to everyone in the extended family. Mom drunkenly bragging about how she'd manipulated me into buying her a new car. Dad laughing about how he'd guilt-tripped me into paying for a medical procedure that was actually a fishing trip to Alaska. Ashley telling her friends I was her personal ATM and how she'd never have to work a real job as long as I was dumb enough to keep funding her lifestyle. The family response was nuclear. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were calling them, texting them, commenting on their now private but still viewable to family social media. Even my grandparents, who had always taken Mom and Dad's side, were appalled. I knew they were takers, my grandmother told me on the phone, her voice shaking with anger. But I never imagined it was this bad. Within a month, they were basically persona non grata at every family event. No one would take their calls. No one would let them crash on their couch. No one would lend them money. For the first time in their adult lives, my parents and sister were truly on their own. It had been almost 2 months since that birthday dinner. 2 months of silence from my immediate family while their world burned down around them. I'd moved on, focusing on my work, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, while dealing with my family's constant demands. I'd even started dating again, something I hadn't had time for in years. Then, on a random Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. It was all 3 of them, Mom, Dad, Ashley, standing on my doorstep like some twisted family portrait. Mom had clearly been crying. Her expensive mascara was smeared. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Ashley was fidgeting with her phone case, not making eye contact. "Can we talk?" Mom asked, her voice small. I almost shut the door in their faces, but curiosity got the better of me. I let them in, but didn't offer them anything to drink, didn't invite them to sit down. I just stood in my entryway with my arms crossed. Dad spoke first. Son, we've made some mistakes. I actually laughed out loud. Mistakes. You committed felony identity theft. You tried to sue me after I supported you for a decade. You called me, what was it in that lawsuit, manipulative and abusive. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. Ashley started crying, actually sobbing. They're going to take the house. I have nowhere to go. My followers keep sending me hate messages. I can't even get a job interview because everyone's seen the news story. Sounds like consequences, I said. Mom stepped forward, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Mike, please. We're desperate. Your father's disability has been cut off. They're investigating him for fraud. The credit card companies are threatening to press charges. We could go to jail. Again, consequences, I said. Dad's face hardened. You'd let your own parents go to jail after everything we did for you. And that's when I lost it. 10 years of pent-up rage just exploded. What exactly did you do for me? Did you pay for my college? No, I worked full-time while taking classes. Did you help with my first apartment, Namu? I lived in a hole with 3 roommates to save money. Did you ever put my needs before yours? Nayu, you took and took and took and expected me to keep giving because we shared DNA. I pulled out my phone and showed them a spreadsheet I'd made. Every transfer, every payment, every loan over the past decade, the total. At the bottom, $733,846.29. That's what you took from me, not including the identity theft, not including the emotional cost, not including the opportunities I missed because I was too busy funding your lifestyle. Mom was full-on wailing now. Dad looked like he might be sick. Ashley had slumped against the wall. We have nowhere else to go, Ashley whispered, her voice cracking. I'm going to lose everything, Dad said, his voice hollow. They're talking about jail time for the disability fraud. The bank is foreclosing on the house, Mom added, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. We'll be homeless in 30 days. They all stared at me, waiting for me to cave to offer them money to bail them out one more time. It was the same look they'd given me 100 times before, but this time I didn't feel guilty. I felt strong. This is rock bottom, I told them. This is what happens when you treat people like ATMs instead of family. This is what happens when you live beyond your means and expect others to foot the bill. Mom started to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. For 10 years, I've enabled your behavior. I've made it easy for you to avoid responsibility. I've been your safety net, your bank account, your fallback plan, and in return, you've lied to me, stolen from me, and tried to destroy my reputation when I finally said enough. I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 envelopes. I'd prepared them weeks ago, hoping I wouldn't need them, but knowing I probably would. These are the terms, I said, handing them each one. Non-negotiable. Inside each envelope was a different document. For Dad, enrollment information for a job training program for seniors and a voucher I'd paid for covering the full cost. For Mom, paperwork for a small studio apartment I'd rented for 6 months, enough time for her to get on her feet, and information about actual job openings in the area. For Ashley, an acceptance letter to a vocational program in medical coding and billing that a friend of mine ran. I'm not giving you money, I explained. I'm giving you one last chance to become actual functioning adults. Take it or leave it, but if you leave it, we're done forever. I'll press charges for the identity theft. I'll make sure every potential employer knows exactly who you are and what you did. I'll make the nuclear option I've taken so far look like a warm-up. Dad started to argue, but Mom grabbed his arm. They whispered furiously to each other. Ashley just stared at the letter in her hands. Why would you do this after everything? She finally asked. Because unlike you 3, I understand what family should actually mean, I said. This is the last help you'll ever get from me. Make it count. They left without another word. I didn't expect them to take the offers. Honestly, I figured they'd find some other relative to leech off of some other story to tell. But a week later, Ryan called. You're not going to believe this. Uncle Tom showed up at that job training program today. 2 days after that, the property management company for Mom's studio apartment confirmed she'd picked up the keys. Ashley was the last holdout. But 3 weeks later, my friend who ran the vocational program texted me, your sister enrolled today. Didn't look happy about it, but she's here. I didn't reach out to any of them, didn't check in, didn't ask how they were doing. That part of my life was over. 6 months later, I got a letter from Dad, just a few lines. The program got me a job at a warehouse. It's hard work, but it's honest. Thank you for not letting me go to jail. I don't expect forgiveness. A month after that, a text from Mom with a photo of her employee badge from a local hotel where she'd gotten a job as a receptionist. Nothing from Ashley until almost 1 year later when she sent an email. I completed the program, got a job at a doctor's office. The pay is okay. I still hate that you did this to us, but I'm not living in my car anymore, so I guess that's something. I never responded to any of them. Never will. As for me, I took some of that money I'd been wasting on them and invested it. I started my own software consulting firm, bought a cabin in the mountains where I spend weekends with people who actually care about me. Ryan and his wife have a standing invitation. So do the other cousins who stood by me. The parasitic family I was born into, they get to live with the consequences of treating their son like an ATM. And I get to live free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making people suffer. It's forcing them to finally grow up while you move on without them. Some people are saying I was too harsh on them and should have given them more chances. Let me be clear. They had 10 years of chances, 10 years of support, of second chances, of just this one more time. If you still think I should have kept supporting them, feel free to send them your money. I'm sure they'd appreciate.